am the Assistant Vice President and Regional Operations Manager. Basically, I'm in charge and I report directly to the owner, so all the 5 stores are my responsibility. I have been in this field probably from when I was 6 years old. I'm 40 now, so people would find it hard to believe that I've been doing this in this industry for 34 years approximately. I grew up in my dad's shop. If I wasn't in school or on Saturday, I spent my time at the shop. So my dad was the kind of guy basically where you were never able to sleep in or have a day where you stood home. So basically, again, if it was the summer on a Saturday, he pulled me out of bed and said, "Let's go to work, boy," and spent my days next to him. He gave me my first tool, which was a bucket and a rag, and that's where I started. And then I graduated to a broom, and basically was able to wash cars. But before that, I had to wash the walls of the shop down, sharpen pencils, clean desks, and basically any and every job in and out of the shop and in the office I was demanded to do, actually. So that's where I started. And basically then graduated into the paint shop, learned how to prep cars, did some minor painting, was never really very talented at it, and I was able to find my talent in the office, and that's where I got my start. So, you know, my dad, when I was in the shop, would say, "What are you doing?" And I would often make the mistake of saying, "I don't have anything to do." And as many of you may know, that's the last thing you should say. He would definitely find plenty of things for me to do. He used to have these glass bookcases up in his office, and he would tell me to go ahead and, you know, clean the glass. It had glass shelves, glass fronts, clean his bookcases, and I would come down in about 5 minutes and basically say, "I'm done. You know, that was easy. I'm finished with that." And he would say, "Come on, let me come up and check it." And he would come upstairs in his office, and he would point out all the different things that I hadn't gotten. And this would go on for hours and hours until I finally was afraid to call him up and tell him I was done, and then I would make sure it was perfect inside, outside, up, down, every end of it. And then finally, after he couldn't find any more fault in what I had done, and I had taken away every chance that he could, then I was done. But I learned really quick not to say that there was nothing to do. I always enjoyed being with the shop guys more than anything, and whenever we would come to work, I would be in the shop. I would stay out of the office at all costs. I would like to stay with the guys, and I was able to get almost a dual education in life, because here I was, this, you know, grade school aged kid that was able to hang around this shop, grown men, and I always wanted to be with the shop guys. I always wanted to be with the painters, and my dad always wanted to get me in the office, and I never had any interest because I was having so much fun out in the shop. But he knew that really my place and where he wanted me was the office, and I pushed it off as long as I could. But he explained to me that you didn't have to know how to fix a car. You didn't have to know how to put a quarter panel on with your own hands. You just needed to know how it was done. So slowly but surely, I started to spend more time in the office and learn the business aspect of the business. So after years of basically doing every job possible in the shop, and working in the office, there came a point in time where it was time for me to take over. And I was the best candidate for the job, having spent my life basically in that business with those people. And I was 22 years old at the time, and I was also going to college, so I was trying to finish my bachelor's degree and run the shop because I had to. And basically, I would go to class in the morning, and then I would eat my lunch driving into the shop, and I would spend the rest of the afternoon and sometimes well into the early evening at the shop. And I just tried to approach things very simply. If I didn't have experience in a certain situation, I would always say, is it wrong or is it right? So if a technician was trying to tell me a job was right and I thought I saw something on there that wasn't, I would say, you know, tell me what you see there is right, and I'll believe you, because if it's not, then I don't want to do it that way. So I used very basic right versus wrong to make my decisions, and I was able to really have turned the shop around for the better at that point. So after I was running the shop for a few years, I would see insurance adjusters come into the shop, and about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd be finished for the day, and I would be thinking to myself, I still have to 6, 7 o'clock tonight to be here. So I said that job and that life might be for me. I felt like I did what I had to do as far as the shop went, and I went to work for an insurance company Allstate Insurance, to be an insurance adjuster, to try to see the other side of our industry, which is the insurance industry. So I wanted to give that a try. However, after spending 3 years with Allstate and seeing everything there was to see on that side, the thing that bothered me was that I really wasn't able to get the sense of satisfaction that working at a shop does. When you fix someone's car and you're able to take something that's broken and damaged, and not only to fix their car, but also to make them whole and happy again, there's a sense of accomplishment there that I didn't really feel when I was working for Allstate, because I would just be writing estimates and then I would never see or hear from that person again. So after 3 years of working for Allstate, they had purchased a chain of body shops called Sterling Collision, and they were a nationwide collision chain that owned 66 stores. So I went to work for Sterling and went back into the body shop. After spending 3 years at Sterling, being a store manager for them and then being a regional manager for them, I received a call one day after I came home from Mark Ciparone. And I'll always remember standing in my backyard and listening to a voicemail. And Mark and I had met each other when I worked for Allstate, and that's why Allstate's important to the story. Even though my father's store and Mark's father's store were about 8 to 9 blocks away, I really didn't know Mark until I went to work for Allstate. And then as an insurance adjuster, went into his shop. I was able to meet Mark and his dad, Rocco. And then I got this call one day, and Mark had told me that he had just purchased his first store in New Jersey, which was his second location, and wanted to see how I was and if I was interested in coming down and taking a look at the shop with him. So Mark was always a really nice guy, and I said sure, and I went down. I met him at the Sewell store. It wasn't open yet. He was still doing some renovations, and came to talk, and Mark wanted me to come and work for him. And at that point in time, I was completely happy. I had a company car. I was a regional manager, and everything was going really well. So I was, at that point, I said thank you, but no thank you. And then a couple more months went down the line, and we talked again, and the store was closer to being opened, and I came down to look at it again. And again, I said, hey, things are going okay for me. Thanks, but no thanks. You're a great guy, but thanks. And then the more and more I sat and thought about it and replayed Mark's conversations in my mind, the more and more I felt that he had more going on with him, and the place for me to be in my future would be with Rocco's. After meeting Mark and talking to him and hearing his vision and his passion and his excitement, I'll never forget that I called him one day out of the blue after we had met for the second or third time, and I said, I'd like to have lunch with you. So we met up for lunch, and my exact words were, I feel like you have my future and my family's best future at heart, and I feel that coming with you is the best thing to do. So we shook hands that day, and I became the manager of Rocco's in Sewell. I spent 3 years at the Sewell store, and the great thing that happened was I'm a really crazy, aggressive, passionate person in my own right. So with Mark's vision and his aggressiveness and passion, and myself at that Sewell store and my aggressiveness and passion, we were really able to do a lot of work and do a lot of good things for people. After spending 3 years as the manager of the Sewell store, at this point we were about to open up our 4th location, and it became evident that this was growing at a level where we needed more people in support roles. So Mark and I discussed, once again, me coming back into a regional role and overseeing several of the stores. So about 4 years ago, I became the regional manager, and I'm able to oversee at that time the 4 locations, and currently the 5 locations. As a regional manager, I am in charge of overseeing all of our operations. We fix probably 250 cars a week out of all of our locations, which is a very large amount of cars that pass through our doors basically every 5 days. I am in charge of each store, the staffing, all of the insurance relations with the various insurance partners that we deal with. You name it, I'm in charge of it. I have an amazing group of people that work with me, and they make my job easier. They are the most hardcore, dedicated, talented individuals that I could possibly ask for. Each of our store managers, each of the support staff that we have in the office, their experience, their commitment, their level of dedication, we make the impossible look easy every single day. Probably the biggest thing that makes me happy today is when I have the chance to help a customer on a one-on-one basis, which I don't get the chance to do very often anymore. And just the other day, a lady came into our office building and she had just ripped off her front bumper on when she was trying to park her car. And I saw how upset she was. She was in tears. She was very upset. You know, her bumper was completely off of her car. And I asked her to have a seat, and in a matter of about 15 minutes, we were able to put her bumper back on for her. And just seeing how happy she was and seeing her smile at the end of that just made my day completely. What I think makes me different is my competitive streak and my intensity that I have as a person. I always want to be on the front lines. I always want to be the best, no matter what it is. If it's a game or sports, I want to win. If it's trying to fix a car, I want to do it better, faster than the next person. It's that spirit that I always want to be the best, and that's a spirit that's shared throughout this company, is a bunch of people who want to be the best. I think that's what makes me different, in that I'll go to any length for a customer. I will get up from Thanksgiving dinner if it means I have to go out and help one of our customers. I'll do that personally, and I know I have a staff full of people who will do that as well.